Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Leviticus. Today we are beginning the next section of Leviticus, that which is found in chapters 23 through 25. Now this section will deal with the rituals of worship that the people of Israel engaged in on a regular basis. Let me read the first couple of verses to you of chapter 23. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, These are my appointed festivals, the appointed festivals of the Lord. You are to proclaim them as sacred assemblies." On the calendar, as the year would go by, there were certain festivals, celebrations, moments of worship that Israel was to engage in on an ongoing basis. So in chapter 23, we'll find first the celebration of the Sabbath, which occurs every week. And then in chapter 23, we will look at the 7 festivals that the Israelites would celebrate every year. And then in chapter 24, we'll look at some of the rituals of worship. The primary focus will be on the burning of the lampstands, how the priests were to keep them burning in the tabernacle, and also the bread of the presence, which the priests were to attend to in the tabernacle. And then chapter 25 will deal with multi-year observances. They will deal with the Sabbath year, which occurs every 7 years. And then they would deal with the year of Jubilee, which occurs every 50 years. So in these 3 chapters, we're talking about the rituals of worship. 7 festivals that would occur every year, how you would keep the bread of the presence and the oil and the lamps burning in the tabernacle continuously, and then the multi-year festival, the sabbatical year every 7 years, and the year of Jubilee. So we see these ongoing rituals of worship that occurred for the life of Israel. Now, the first one that's mentioned is the one that occurs every week, and that is the Sabbath day. We find that mentioned in verse 3 of chapter 23. There are 6 days when you may work, but the 7th day is a day of Sabbath rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work wherever you live. It is a Sabbath to the Lord. Built into the weekly schedule of the life of Israel was that one day set apart as a Sabbath unto the Lord. On it, you're not to do any of your regular work, but it is a day of sacred assembly, when you will remember who God is and how He has redeemed you. You'll remember the very fabric of creation, that in 6 days God created all that is, and on the 7th day He rested. And in that remembering and in that knowledge, you will worship. So every week, the Israelite people set aside that one day as the Sabbath day, the 7th day, a day of rest unto the Lord. Now remember, these Israelites had just recently been redeemed from slavery in Egypt, where their taskmasters and their owners, that is the Egyptians, made them work unceasingly. There were no days of rest. But God has redeemed them. God has set them free. No more are they required to work every day in unceasing bondage, but once a week, on the 7th day, they take a day of rest unto the Lord. Remember that He is the one who supplies them the energy to work the other 6 days. He is the one who is God. And so that Sabbath day, that 7th day of every week, they remember that God has redeemed them and that they belong unto the Lord. So the 7th day, the Sabbath day, is a day of ceasing from your regular activities, your regular work, and resting in the Lord and assembling as the people of God to worship the Lord. That was a regular part of the worship ritual of Israel. I think it should be a regular part of our worship as well. We still maintain the Sabbath principle by setting aside the Lord's day to remember that Jesus has redeemed us and made us his own. It is he who supplies us, and our life is found through rest and faith in him. So just as much as it was a part of the ritual of Israelite worship, it is also a part of the ritual of Christian worship. We remember who we are, we remember who our Lord is, and how he has redeemed us by setting aside that one day as the Lord's Day, a day of sacred assembly to worship, to adore the Lord, and to rest in him. May this be a part of our regular routine to remind us that we belong to God and that he has redeemed us. Hope you join us tomorrow for our next 5-minute Bible study in the book of Leviticus.